Game over. It is game over.
Game over, cancer. I'm Val Solomon, Director of Program Impact at Cannonball Kids Cancer Foundation.
And I'm Dana Nichols, Executive Director of CKC.
Game Over Cancer, a podcast dedicated to exploring conversations about pediatric cancer research, solutions, and inspiring family stories.
We're a nonprofit dedicated to creating innovative treatment options for kids fighting cancer and educating for change.
By creating a space for these conversations, we empower the community to take action and provide tangible hope.
Game over, cancer. Screw you, cancer. Well, y'all, we have a great episode for you today, and it's all about collective impact. You know, institutions collaborate to fund innovative research, and institutions collaborate to share the data and the work to give best patient care. And we get to dive in and talk about all of it. And that was really great.
Yes, we had Dr. Metz. We're very excited that we get to introduce him to you. He has been, not just a wonderful example of the type of research and the type of doctor that we try to fund with CKC, but also he has just stepped up and above and beyond, like so many of our researchers do, to step in and take opportunities like this to share their research, but also talk about what it's like to be a doctor, treating this incredibly difficult and often complex disease. So we really appreciated him being able to come and share with us and share with you. So enjoy. Thank you for joining us for Game Over Cancer. We have an amazing guest today, one of our funded researchers. He's a pediatric oncologist at Moffitt Cancer Center, specializing in the care of adolescents and young adults with solid tumors and sarcoma. He's also a part-time assistant professor in the Cancer and Blood Disorder Institute at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital in St. Petersburg, Florida. He's co-chairman of the National Pediatric Cancer Foundation Sunshine Project, a clinical trials and translational research consortium of leading pediatric oncology institutions across the U.S. with a mission to identify more effective and less toxic treatments for children with cancer. So we love talking with him.
Absolutely.
His research interests include novel therapies and clinical trials for patients with sarcomas and other tumors, as well as cellular therapy for pediatric solid tumors, and tumor-infiltrating lymphocyte therapy. He is married to an amazing pediatric ER physician, and they have two boys, ages 8 and 4. Please welcome Dr. Jonathan Metz.
Hello. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi. Thank you guys for having me.
We are delighted to help our audience learn more about the research we fund, because it's so nebulous sometimes, right? Everyone knows we need cures and research, but how do we get there? But before we talk about what you're working on specifically, we thought we'd go kind of back to the beginning of why you wanted to become a pediatric oncologist to begin with.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. So I started out deciding to be an oncologist when I was about 11 years old. My dad had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. This was the late 80s, early 90s. Received treatment for 3 or 4 years and eventually wound up having a bone marrow transplant. So around the age of 11 or 12, I spent a good portion of my summer going back and forth to a local hospital where he was admitted for about 4 or 5 months having a transplant. So I saw all this amazing therapy going on to treat a hard to cure disease, and just became extremely interested in it. And that carried on through the rest of high school and college. Um, My dad was cured of his lymphoma, but eventually developed severe toxicities related to the treatment years later that gave him chronic health conditions. And he unfortunately passed away in 2016 due to lung failure that likely was related to the treatment he received. So we're very grateful for the extra 20 years that we had with him, but I do know the therapy he received was toxic and did have late effects for him. So uh, my time in school developed alongside that happening. So my desire became to develop novel treatments that hopefully have less toxicity and are more effective. So I always planned on being an oncologist. I never knew I was going to be interested in kids until I got into medical school, third and fourth years, and started doing rotations on the pediatric oncology floor. and fell in love with taking care of kids. So I figured I would combine the two and do pediatric oncology. And so that's how I ended up there. And my job's had a great journey so far, and I'm lucky now to take care of patients all the way from age 0 up to age 40. So I get to see a wide age range of patients, all with these diseases of young people.
That's amazing. And I think when I'm talking to someone who's saying, I wanted to do this since I was 11, right? I'm
Right.
super, I have this very driven path. And I imagine the reality versus the dream doesn't match up entirely, but it matches up enough that you're still in this field and you've pursued. But I wondered if you wanted to speak to that a little bit of the idea of as a kid, what we dream of versus when we're an adult actually doing it.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah. When I was a kid, I saw um, everything was new and everything was foreign and interesting. It was, and then also interesting is a bone marrow transplant unit back then was a totally different place. It was you were patients getting a transplant were essentially in a bubble, and it's not like that anymore. So I remember multiple stages of having to wash hands and put on specific gowns to actually get back to my dad. And he was in a very isolated unit, and I found the process. On the whole, just extremely interesting. He had wonderful doctors there and a wonderful team, and so I got to see all them and note the way that they interacted with patients. And a transplant is a marathon, not a sprint. So we saw these same people day in and day out, bringing the same care and attention to my dad over and over again. After what must have been grueling day after day, so to see them bring that resiliency every day was extremely uplifting and inspiring to me. Yeah, but you're right. The path to actually doing what I do now is not a straight path. I went to college with the plan of being a doctor, and that oncologist was always in the back of my mind. But I entertained lots of other ideas. Thought bone marrow transplant might be what I wanted to do. It ended up not being the path I took, just because I found pediatric solid tumors to be a really interesting field, and I connected a lot with the patients because I take care of a lot of teenagers and young adults that have these diseases, and I found that tends to be the group I connect with the most. So, yeah, definitely a meandering path to where I ended up at today.
Well, it's so neat to hear, when there's a personal connection, right? And now you are the doctor that is in this day in and day out with your patients, and I know that they feel just as connected and value you and your input and your care as much as you did with the doctors that you saw every day during your dad's care. Tell us a little bit about so the reason we know you is because you applied for and received funding from Cannonball. And so usually that means that our researchers have been, in the business of caring for children, but also noticing the gaps in treatment. And so you noticed a gap in treatment and wanted to create a clinical trial to help address that need. So tell us about that and the project that we funded so our listeners can know more about it.
Yeah. So the project the Cannonball funded, we first began discussing back in 2018. So cellular therapy, so using the body's own immune system cells to fight cancer, has been an extremely exciting field for the last decade plus, probably even the last 20 to 30 years. And we've seen major advances in leukemia and other diseases. And I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of cellular therapy trials going on in adult care and dozens going on in pediatric care as well right now. But we have not hit that home run yet for most solid tumors, most sarcomas or neuroblastoma, or a lot of the tumors I see on a day-to-day basis. Most of the focus is going into CAR T cells. So these are T cells from the body that you take out, you re-engineer to make them cancer fighting, and then you give back to the patient. These have been very successful in leukemia, but have not yet had the same effects in solid tumors. And so, an early interest I've had is what cellular therapies are out there that are not CAR T, because there's lots of people working on that, and I'm sure that at some point they're going to be super successful. But let's pursue all avenues and look at other potential therapies. So, I'm lucky here in the Tampa Bay area that we have Moffitt Cancer Center, which is a clinical leader in something called tumor-infiltrating lymphocyte therapy. So instead of just pulling T cells out of the blood and re-engineering them, Moffitt and other sites that do a lot of TIL therapy take T cells from the tumor themselves. So these are immune system cells that have found their way to the tumor. They know the tumor is not supposed to be there, and they've managed to get there. But once they get there, they're having trouble actually inducing tumor kill and actually having an anti-cancer effect. And that's for a variety of reasons. It's sometimes because the T cells themselves are not working there, but sometimes it's just because the tumor itself is so smart and is putting out all these signals telling the T cells that it's okay, I'm okay, leave me alone, you don't need to attack me. And so we think that by getting those T cells out of the tumor, working on them in a lab, we can increase their anti-cancer potential, make them more angry, so that they could be reintroduced to the body to fight off the remaining tumors that are there. So this approach has been very successful in melanoma. In fact, there's the first FDA approval of a TIL products that just came about last year for patients with advanced melanoma. That work's been going on for 30 plus years, so it takes a long time to get from the initial egg of an idea to the actual FDA approval. But it's there, and the technology is improving now that lots of other tumor types are having rapid advances in the same field. We're growing these cells better. We're getting better at making them active, and we're starting to see effects in other cancers as well. So my group noticed that no one has really pursued it very much in pediatric tumors. So all different types of adult tumors, there's studies going on, but no one's really gone in depth into pediatrics yet. So back in 2018, with our partners at Moffitt, we decided to uh, get some patients at All Children's to donate their tumors. So they were going to surgery anyways. They were going to have their tumors taken out. And we said, hey, after we're done taking care of you with this tumor, can we have what's left over to study and see if we can learn more about these cells? So we were really lucky. About 20 patients agreed to do that for us. So over a period of 2 years, we transported these tumors to labs across the Tampa Bay area and did studies on them and found that we were very successful at growing these TIL cells, which was really not known until we did this study. People tend to think that pediatric tumors are not quite as immune active as adult tumors, and so it really wasn't known that we could do this, but we found it to be successful. We've presented our work and are working on publishing it now. And so the logical next step after we did that was to say, how do we get this closer to patients? And it's not an overnight process to introduce these therapies. So we designed a trial it's got two purposes. One is we're going to get more tumor tissue from patients. We're going to be able to do more sophisticated studies with that tumor tissue. But at the same time, we're going to start actually making the T cell products that could eventually be given to patients. Um, and we're identifying patients that have high risk diseases, have a high chance of that coming back. When they have normal surgeries, we're going to make these products, we're going to put them on ice and save them. And then we hope that we never need to use them. But if their tumor comes back, we are going to approach them about if they'd like to receive this as a therapy for their cancer. And so that'll be the phase one portion of the study. That'll be where we prove the safety of this treatment in pediatric tumors. It's a small study; only up to a dozen patients are going to receive this. That's because we need to prove it's safe before we can start expanding it and prove how well it works. And so we anticipate this process is going to take a couple of years. And we have partners at Moffitt Cancer Center and at Roswell Park up in Buffalo, New York, that are going to help us bring this study to reality. And so, yeah, it's a complicated process of tumors moving across the country and across the bay to get to the right place to make the therapy, and we're doing all the scientific work on top of that. But I think the eventual outcome of that will be well worth the effort we're putting in now.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we wanted to talk about, which I feel like segues nicely, is you have a lot of cross institution collaboration. You're working in Tampa Bay, you're at Moffitt, you're at Johns Hopkins All Children's. Things are going up to New York, as you said. And I wondered if you wanted to touch a little more on what that entails, because you're saying it's complicated. It sounds complicated, but it's so fascinating to see institutions working together towards a common goal.
Right. Yeah, if we had one big institution where we all worked, things would definitely happen a lot easier. But I think that doing this work across institutions is really important because that's when you can combine people's ideas. I have some expertise in the clinical care of pediatric solid tumors, but I need my partners at Moffitt to be able to make these cells for me so that I can give them. Um, I have a certain number of patients here in Tampa that I can treat, but when you're doing a study this complex, the number of patients that it's actually eligible for that treatment decreases. And so you need partners that are also going to help treat alongside you so that we can get this therapy to enough patients to have an eventual scientific outcome that we can report. And so all these pieces are integral. It requires a ton of work to set up those collaborations. Each center has to agree to work on the same terms, to use the same databases to communicate our findings. Um, Something I don't think I fully appreciated back when this project started is cellular therapies add a whole nother layer of complexity. It's one thing to give novel drugs to a patient, but whenever you create a cellular product, you're growing something in a lab. You also have to be able to prove that there's no infections in that product, that you're not going to be transmitting viruses and bacteria in that product, that that product makes it from point A to point B safely and in a timely fashion and doesn't, the temperature of the product doesn't go out of range during that. So, these products are extremely valuable and a lot of time and a lot of people's effort goes into getting them safely to patients. And so that coordination is extremely complex, but we're very lucky to have these partner institutions that have committed themselves to working on this with us.
I think I didn't really fully appreciate until getting into this work from the funding side of just how much collaboration has to happen
Mhm.
between institutions just to make sure that the therapy that's developed and is being delivered on one site is the therapy that's developed and being delivered in the same way as another site. And it wasn't until we had a few conversations with some researchers where they just outlined how important that is. And if you think about it, the final product that you have of this clinical trial that's going to say, hey, this treatment works, you have to ensure that it's being delivered in the same way across all these institutions. And as a mother of just one child, I can share how hard it is just to get one other person to do things that I ask them to do. So it must be, it's a big lift. And it's not just the collaborations on on that side. You have been incredibly successful in getting institutions to collaborate in order to fund you as well. So CKC has funded this research, but you've also pulled funding from other foundations as well. And so we wondered if you could speak a little bit to that aspect of it too, because before you even get to the part where you're delivering a treatment somewhere, you've got to pull together the funds from different locations, and that adds to the timeline as well.
Yeah, so we all have a dream trial that we'd love to design that has all the bells and whistles and is the Cadillac, and then you figure out the price tag of that, and it'll blow your mind how expensive this stuff is. And a cell therapy trial adds even extra costs. So yeah, it's interesting. I ran my first trial right out of fellowship, so about 8 years ago. And the price tag on that trial was a few $100,000, which to me at that time seemed like an enormous amount of money. And years have gone by, the complexity of therapy has increased, and now dealing with cell therapies, I mean that those costs increase exponentially. Um, and so it really is extremely difficult and to identify one funding source that can supply everything that you'd like to do. Just by this year the sheer price tag of the work that we're doing. And so the way we've approached this grant, this project, and the grants that go into this project is by splitting the project into chunks that all sort of have a theme around them. So we do have several funders for this project. Our original research starting back in 2018 was funded by Swim Across America, and we're very lucky they continue to partner with us. And so their main focus has been covering the cost of cell production on this trial. So the Moffitt Cell Therapy Lab actually making this product is a 6-week process. We have to get the tumor there. They have to isolate the tumor cell, the T cells. They have to prove the product's not infectious, and then they have to grow it into something that can be used. And so Swim Across America has dedicated their funds to funding that part of the trial. My work with Cannonball has been around all the people and the team that we need in place. I'm going to treat patients, and my collaborators will too. But the number of humans that will be involved in one patient being treated is over a dozen. We'll have a statistician. We have clinical research coordinators. We have a study startup team, people that have to work on the regulatory aspects and make sure that we make it through all the appropriate steps to get this trial activated. And so Cannonball has been very generous in helping us fund all the human effort that has to go into the trial. And then the Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital Foundation, specifically the Benjamin Gilkey Fund, is funding the actual treatment costs on the grounds for these patients. So when they come in to get their chemotherapy before the cells, they need care after they get the cells. The Benjamin Gilkey Foundation and Johns Hopkins All Children's is funding that part of the trial. So we add all those together and we get a workable product. But if we're missing any of those components, the whole project grinds to a halt. So the team that's been built around funding this is amazing, and I'm just very thankful that Cannonball has joined our team.
Well, there's definitely an art to grant funding, isn't there, from our side, but certainly from the side of the applicant. And I know you also have foundation folks that help with whatever they can for the researchers, and I hope our listeners are able to understand the amount of work that goes in, not just to the trial itself, but in the planning and the funding and everything. And so it really is a huge, huge lift when people get involved in whatever way they can. You know, we're all doing our pieces, and Dr. Metz has a whole team, and there's so many moving pieces there. And it's just beautiful when everything comes together like that.
Yeah, I wondered if you want to talk about any success or what you qualify as success, because it is, and not to be trite, it is so much work. Like this, every step of the way feels like climbing a mountain. And so where do you see movement enough to keep you going?
Yes, so it's very interesting when I look at things on a week to week basis. If I focus too much on it, it can become it can become quite disheartening. You need to look at it in chunks of 3 to 6 months to actually see the progress happening. So our biggest successes recently were, in early 2023 is when we got the official buy-in from all of our funders, um, which is a huge step because to attract funding, you need to have a project that's ready to go. But you need a lot of people's effort to have a project ready to go, and all those people's effort is going to rely on the funding. So it becomes this cycle of funding makes the project go, but the project needs to go to get the funding. And so once you hit that point where all the people have committed, that was a huge step. The next big step for us came, we had done our preclinical work in the lab and shown what we thought was successful production of these cells, but then we had to do what we call dry runs. So we had to produce a full clinical grade product that could be infused to a patient. And so in early 2023 into mid 2023, we had to enroll a couple more patients on our preclinical study with the goal of meeting every single manufacturing milestone that had to be met to make a full product. So 2 more patients donated their tumors to us to actually make the full cell products at Moffitt. And we were very lucky that both were successful. You know, most people would say about a 60% success rate in producing a cell product would be about normal for TIL, and so there was a high chance that we might have missed on our first or our second products, and that would have delayed things even further. But both of our first two products were fully successful, so that moved us forward. We got our investigational drug application approved by the FDA in October of 2023. So that's where the government oversight says that it's okay to run our trial. And so that was a huge step as well. And now we are in the activation process. So this is a huge and very time-consuming process, to your point earlier, where every legal agreement has to be in place. The ethical boards at every hospital have to say that what you're doing carefully balances risks and benefits for the patient. There is no cancer therapy that I know of that's without risk. And so our ethical boards are very cognizant of that, but they have to feel that the benefit of what you're offering can outweigh those risks. And so getting through those reviews, getting all the contracting and grants process in place, that's what we're in the thick of now. And so I think that's going to be the next big milestone, is when one of our sites finally gets activated and we can start enrolling patients.
Well, it's an enormous amount of work, and we appreciate all the effort and the dedication that you clearly show. I mean, I was thinking as you were ticking off those different parts of the calendar that, geez, anything at any point in time is enough for me to be like, what if this doesn't work? And I can just imagine the sheer willpower it takes just to keep trudging through it every day. And we really appreciate it. And, it reminds me, we just had one of our donors who has been in the room to hear you speak. And she was on our podcast. And one of the things that she was saying, when I hear researchers speak about the work that they do, and all people are asking me to do is come to an event and maybe give a little bit of money if I can, like, they're very happy to do it. So in addition to all the work that you're doing, to be able to join us today and help our listeners understand what it is that's happening when we say let's fund innovative research. I think our folks are savvy, and I think they're interested and they're passionate. And so it's just really great to connect you with folks who, want to learn a little bit more about what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that strikes me every time we speak, Dr. Metz, is when you talk about the folks and the kids lining up the trial, that donate bone marrow, that donate for this transplant, donate part of their tumor, whatever that is, for a clinical trial they won't be eligible to be part of, right? So we know that the kids in this fight are doing all they can. We know that our researchers are doing all they can. And the least we can do is pay attention and make sure that everyone's educated and activated. But I know that if our listeners want to support our researchers, want to support our application, that are projects that haven't even gotten started yet and are coming down the pike, we are really excited about that. And they can make a gift on our website. You can make a gift on our website if you know that it's cannonballkidscancer.org. And if you know of a researcher, you can also go to our website or send them there, because there's an apply for grants section, and we are always looking for innovative research like Dr. Metz has. That is who we want to be funding. So please check all of that out. And like, subscribe, and share with everyone, right?
That's right. We hope you're ready to be a part of Team CKC. Make sure you join us in Educating for Change. Share, like, and subscribe.
Thank you for tuning in. To all of our listeners, we know it takes so much to face this topic, but we appreciate you joining us and making a commitment to be part of our fight. I'm Dana Nichols.
I'm Val Solomon.
Until next time, CK.
See you later. Join us as we transform fear into courage and turn adversity into opportunities for change.
If you want to be involved in the conversations that create change in the world of pediatric cancer, take a moment, share, like, and subscribe. Absolutely. Cancer, right? Screw you, cancer. Get the heck out of here.